If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Soups with myself, Greg Oops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've all been seeing here in the off-season, some of the coaching moves that are really standing out to him, these teams that are mid-majors that are really looking to bust through, be able to add some talent right now because we've seen a lot of the bigger guys come off the board, so we're going to be chatting about that with him and so much more. And then in the final segment, wasn't the most rambunctious day of transfer moves in college basketball on Tuesday, but we did see a few, and we'll get those all rounded up for you guys. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUNet_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we do have everything brought to you by Edge Boost. Over at Edge Boost, they make sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365 on leap years, 366 days out of the year, because it is an account in which you're able to utilize your funds for gambling transactions whenever and wherever. When you go to edgeboost.bet, utilize that promo code of Greg. That is GREG. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit of up to $25. Now let's talk with our good friend Rob, who does a great job of deciphering this game of college basketball. If you're looking for bets this time of year, by the way, does a great job on the baseball front as well. His YouTube is over at his name, Rob Donaldson, and you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And, you know, I love that you're still inviting me on for these here in mid-May, because college basketball really, truly never stops. And whether it's the transfer portal or, you know, these coaching carousel moves, there's a lot of teams sort of still formulating a roster. And, you know, we're still waiting on that court decision that we've been talking about for probably north of a month at this point now.
Oh, yes. The guys that might be in college basketball longer than Van Wilder was in school. That's always a lot of good, clean family fun right there. And I do think that it is interesting to look at this time period, because I feel like it's really the mid-majors that are starting to get some of these big ads. And for a lot of these power conference teams, they filled out their roster. But I think that this is a very important time of year to find out what you're going to be able to get in terms of some of those teams that might be out there in like the Missouri Valley Conference, that might be out there in like the Mountain West, what have you, because they seem to be the schools that are getting their pick of the litter right now after the power conference teams were able to fill out their rosters with regards to their starters.
Yeah, and notably to that point, something that I've kind of noticed going through all of these transfer portal moves is I feel like less so this year, there's not as many notable down transfers from higher major programs to the mid-major and kind of lower level ranks. And I think part of that is because of the transfer portal formula over past years of, hey, you know, we're going to acquire a lot of guys with only 1 year or 2 years left of eligibility. And once that runs out, you're not just replacing those 3 or 4 spots that you kind of glued together with the transfer portal. You might be overhauling your entire roster because of that strategy. And I think that we're seeing a lot of guys go from a high major program to a different high major program. And that's kind of the tendency that I'm seeing right now in the portal.
Yeah, it certainly has been interesting to take a look at all these tendencies. And what I think is really interesting is the way that, I don't know if I'm off base with this, but it feels like a lot of the West Coast teams have been having quite a bit of success in the portal. And I'm talking about the mid-major West Coast teams, because I do think that there's a little bit of a trend of these guys not wanting to have to go to like Rutgers and stuff for schools like UCLA, USC, and all that traveling. I feel like these teams like UNLV, like the big West schools that we've talked about quite a bit, have really had a lot of success as a result in terms of finding talent.
Oh, I think you're 100% on the dot. And this is actually something that I've kind of forecasted 2 years back as, you know, pinpointing those mid-major teams that kind of almost transcend the mid-major level in terms of either funding or branding. And UNLV certainly in that mix. Grand Canyon would be in that mix. Gonzaga, Memphis, those types of programs that, yeah, if you look at the totality of their conference, you're going to see a wide variety of spectrums in there. But I think to your point, what UNLV has done in the portal has been really, really, actually one of the few programs that I think at the mid-major level has attracted those down transfers. And on top of those down transfers, they're also getting mid-major players who are actually really good mid-major players to come to their school. So they're kind of getting the best of both worlds rather than just kind of purely just getting picked apart like a lot of these other mid-major programs.
No doubt about it. That's big in this day and age. And just being able to find that talent, I think it is big for them. It's Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the Rob's Best Bet Show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And additionally with that, I do feel like these West Coast schools that are attracting a lot of talent, like UNLV, like Colorado State, I think that they just did a good job with their coaching hires as well. Like I look at Josh Pastner, and I always felt like he got short shrift over at Memphis. I think that Memphis is putting him in a little bit of a higher regard after what we've seen out of Penny Hardaway for so many years, and the fact that he hasn't been doing a lot of winning. Ali Farouk going over to Colorado State, and I just feel like even with UC San Diego, the way that they've been able to bring in talent, I feel like these are the programs that are really getting it right. And you even go back to the previous coaching cycles with those Big West schools that have brought in the Division II coaches I have been such a stan of as well. I think that these are programs that are really getting it right.
Well, Greg, now, and this is a word that's been thrown out over the past, whatever COVID sort of came into the mix, but unprecedented territory, right now we're sort of in unprecedented territory with these eligibility rulings, with NIL, with the transfer portal being such a monster. And there are going to be programs that take advantage of this kind of 5-year, maybe even 10-year window of truly establishing themselves as, a destination for transfer portal or a destination for NIL opportunities. And there are going to be some programs that just sit on their hands and say, hey, we've always been successful. Maybe we'll just continue to keep that trend until they can't. And I think to your point, Colorado State has a really good building block after last year's NCAA tournament, and there's a lot of programs that are taking advantage of it with like a UNLV, for example. Heck, even a Grand Canyons are paying their head coach, paying their players to retain them, and going out and getting guys as well through the portal there too. And I really do feel like the programs that do that are going to see the residual effects for years and years to come here.
Absolutely. And this is something else I saw over the last few days that really stood out to me. These schools that they look for multiple guys from the same program to come into their program. Because I'm talking about Texas State. They bring in multiple guys from Louisiana Monroe. Jalen Bolden is going to be going over there along with Makai Willis as well. How about you take a look at those sorts of things? Because I still go back to when Southern Miss didn't have Andre Curbelo, and they brought in a pair of guys from Mercer. They were one of the best against the spread teams in all of college basketball. And I think that that's something that goes very much under the radar. But when these schools are able to find multiple guys from the same program to come in, that's something that instantly draws my attention.
100%, because it gives you the ability to win right away, even with a complete roster turnover at, say, a different program because the head coach jumped to that program, or just because you kind of want to say, hey, that's like our AAA affiliate, or that's how we're going to utilize it. Let's bring over a lot of talented guys that we know already gel together and win right now, because what we do know about college basketball and with college kids, with so much money on the table, if you perform well, there's going to be a lot of pressure to get picked apart in the offseason of the following season. And if you do have that kind of that tether, that glue, whether it is bringing over a head coach from that previous stop or just a core group that's been together for multiple seasons, that's going to give you a chance to not only have just that 1 year instant impact performance, but really kind of parlay that over maybe 2, 3, 4 years. And once that ball gets rolling, who's to say it's going to stop?
Yep, and I do like what Texas State was able to do there. So they're a school that instantly grabs my attention. And I'm not sure how you take a look at just conferences in general, but I feel like there have been a few successful conferences here in the portal. But the Atlantic 10 is really standing out to me because I do think the fact that they don't have to fund football, that's been helping them out quite a bit. And as we know, the Atlantic 10 always a rock solid conference, but these teams like the Georgias, George Washington, George Mason, VCU, I feel like they're really having nice off seasons. And after the Atlantic 10 was really held without any at-large bids last season, I think that that's going to turn around this season.
Yeah, and the A10, the American, the Mountain West, they're all kind of in a very similar boat where, and I guess the Mountain West is a little bit different because of the Pac-12 switch up that's going to be on the horizon, but the A10 and the American in particular are conferences rather that have a lot of programs with a notable billing and can potentially get those multiple bids. And again, with so much roster realignment, with so much transfer portal and NIL, roster building going on, who's to say that, the North Texases of the world can't all of a sudden just say, hey, let's invest in our program. Let's bring some talented guys here to this program and let's emerge. And to your point, you brought over the A10. That's a very rich league in terms of a lot of conference teams that have money, a lot of NIL to retain guys, to bring new guys in, to pay good head coaches. And we've seen that time and time again, where if the coaches are jumping from that league, they are typically jumping to a job that's pretty darn notable. And I think that's just a true testament to where those conferences kind of stand in the hierarchy of college basketball.
Oh, I agree with you. And I do think that with these programs, they're doing a nice job of just being able to build themselves up the right way. And then how about if we talk about another conference that doesn't have to deal with football? Joining me on the show, we do have Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the Rob's Best Bets show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And that would be the Big East, because I look at these middle tier teams. Like, I really like what Georgetown has been able to do here in the offseason, bringing in Langston Love, bringing in a lot of these guys I felt like has been rock solid. Butler, I feel like, has had a good offseason as well. And I look at sort of the middle of the Big East, and I don't think that it's getting the attention that it deserves for the fact that you've had a lot of schools go out there, be able to put in there some funding. Now, still not bullish on Seton Hall. They need to add some shooting for my liking. But that said, teams not named Seton Hall, I feel like, have had some pretty nice off seasons.
Yeah, truly. When you look at the Big East, I would say there's only about 2 or 3 that really aren't truly invested to the level of everyone else surrounding that league. And yes, St. John's, UConn, they're going to be kind of head and shoulders. Villanova, I would throw out there as well, as sort of the richest quote unquote teams in the conference, or the most heavily invested in the game of basketball. But to your point, it's not a huge league. They haven't really brought in a ton of new teams into the mix, and they also don't have to pay for, football, which is the big sort of money driving sport. So a lot of the revenue that they generate through basketball just kind of feeds back to this small crowd. And to their credit, over the years, they haven't just been a top-heavy conference. They have gotten in, 5, 6, 7 teams in the NCAA tournament and have made several runs and have had a lot of rankings and publicity through Fox. I really do feel like Big East is one of those conferences that, typically it's kind of regarded as a high major, but they could excel past, some of these like maybe ACC schools in the very, very near future. And a lot of them already have.
Yeah, they certainly have. And for the ACC, I think that's so interesting with them because they're another conference that I feel a little bit better about. Hiring on Will Wade this offseason was good. I like what Virginia's been able to do here in the offseason. The fact that they bring in Odom from VCU, and additionally, they've done a nice job in the transfer portal, bringing in Malik Thomas as well. And I feel like that's a program that is on their way up. It's going to take many, many years for them to be a rebuild because they lost all those coaches, but I felt like this offseason was a step in the right direction for them.
Yeah, especially because, to your point, over the past 5, 6 years even, we've seen Coach K go by, obviously Rick Pitino left before then, but Roy Williams and just Tony Bennett, a number of great head coaches have kind of left this conference, and the guys that they ended up hiring as replacements were guys that were, sort of the heir apparents, if you will, the assistants to that guy, and a lot of them really haven't lived up to the billing. You do have a John Shire that I think absolutely has crushed it at Duke, even with starting on third base, if you will, but, when you make it that deep in the tournament multiple times, that absolutely deserves credit, and clearly he's not underachieving, which is the big portion of that. But yeah, you have a lot of programs kind of in the mix that can take the next step, have the funding to take the next step, and have hired coaches to do so, and it really just kind of comes down to execution and non-conference play, which is truly what plagued them last season.
Yeah, and what has really plagued them as well, I'm not sure if you disagree with this, just those bottom teams like Boston College, for example. When the Payne train was over there at Louisville obviously doing much better now, but when they had Kenny Payne, those are the programs that have really been hurting them. And I think that that's become so big in college basketball in this day and age as well. Not the fact that you have these top teams in these conferences, but just avoiding those bottom teams. And that's why the SEC was so formidable last season.
Yeah, and to your point, one of the bottom teams of the ACC over past years has been North Carolina State, and they had that one-off kind of Final Four run that came out of nowhere, and I think that sort of changed the perspective or the narrative of the bottom of the ACC or the middle for a short period of time. But I would throw them right in the mix. Obviously, Miami has never really been this bad in a long time, and all of a sudden now they're in this position where they only won 7 games this past season. Pitt sort of in the middle. There's a lot of teams near that bottom that need to break through that ceiling. And, I think North Carolina State is obviously in a very good position to do so with Will Wade, but I do still wonder about a lot of those bottom teams, and I really do think we're still going to see a mainly top-heavy ACC next season, regardless of kind of what happens at that bottom 7 level.
Yep, I do think that it is going to be a top-heavy conference. I think that it's going to be just a little bit better with regards to those middle teams, but then again, it really couldn't have gotten much worse, so that's not saying a lot there. And Rob, when it comes down to it, have there been a few schools that have been catching your attention here over the last few weeks that you don't feel like they're getting the love that they deserve and you want to shout them out here?
Well, you actually stole one right off the jump in this episode. I was going to highlight UNLV for you guys, and, another team to kind of fit with that theme of maybe that mid-major player that could really, break through an even bigger ceiling that they have in years past. I look at Grand Canyon because that is, again, a program that is heavily invested in college basketball. And there's a lot of questions about, how they were going to do with the NIL portion, maybe picking their team apart. We saw Duke Brennan go to Villanova early in the transfer portal cycle, and Tyon Grant Foster still testing out the NBA waters, technically in the portal as well. But, man, they had Nanu Owusu from Brown, who missed last season due to an injury. They added Jaden Henley from UNLV, Brian Moore from Norfolk State, Dusty Stromer from Gonzaga, and William Breibach from Washington. And I don't think that they're done adding a lot of talent to this roster. This would still be a mid-major team that I think could be at the very, very top of the WAC. And although last year they kind of underperformed, I really do feel like they could break through and have a really nice NCAA tournament showing if everything goes to plan here.
Absolutely, and everything always goes to plan when you're aboard because, Rob, you do such a great job of lending your insight on this great game of college basketball. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, I always appreciate having me on, man. And for those who are wanting to follow my Major League Baseball bets or my college basketball bets, once those games start back up here in the fall/winter, you can do so on my Twitter/X page at RobDFB and also on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Rob Donaldson. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
And it is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. He does such an amazing job. Take a look at this wonderful game of college basketball, and every single time he's aboard, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I recap the news and notes we saw in college basketball on Tuesday.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson. He does such a tremendous job with his show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends amazing insights. Did so once again today. So big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours. I thought that this was a good pickup. Pacific has really been doing some nice things in the transfer portal. As Britt Harris, he was over at USC Upstate last season, and he was able to give the team right around about 11.5 points per contest, shot 37.5% from three-point range. He has decided that he is going to be going to Pacific. Pacific was a little bit of an underwhelming team last season, but you saw Dave Smart, who was actually a very good coach out there in the country of Canada over at Carleton. He's done a nice job just being able to bring in better pieces this year. He brought in a lot of guys that he knew from his roots over at Texas Tech. They just didn't necessarily go together. Now he's got himself a really good backcourt. Don Capriati, who a few seasons ago was a really rock-solid three-point shooter. Already Eastern Christian is coming in. Jaden Clayton was one of the head of the stakes over at Maine is going to be coming in. They've actually brought in Isaac Jack to be able to help out down low along Casey Egbaniwe. I'm very impressed by this Pacific team. They brought in TJ Wainwright about 48 or so hours ago as well. That's another good three-point shooter. Pacific, I think, is very, very much improved. We haven't seen this team be relevant in about 2 decades, so it's very nice to be able to see because they don't necessarily have the world's greatest facilities out there, but I really like what they've been able to do here in the transfer portal. So I thought that that was a good gift for them. I think that this is a solid get as well. As you saw, Jeremiah Williams, he was was over at Rutgers last season, and he was a starter for them. Now, anyone that wasn't the big two and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. As for Williams, about 7 points, a little bit over a CO per contest. 2 seasons ago in a small sample size, he was averaging closer to 12.5 points per contest, but he's decided that he's going to be going on over there to Georgetown. And for Georgetown, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what they do here in another year under Ed Cooley, because they clearly took some strides forward from year 1 to year number 2. The defense was much better. The offense was leaving a bit of something to be desired. And it's a Georgetown unit that they brought in some pieces thus far, and they're certainly going to be looking to, shall we say, rebuild. Bringing in Duncan Boom Boom Powell was a nice versatile piece. It's KJ Lewis. I really love that pickup for them. And then they're buying low on Vincent Iwuchukwu, along to Sean Harris-Smith, pair of guys that were former top 50 recruits that just really didn't pan out in general. I still have my question marks with Harris-Smith, but I think that Iwuchukwu down low is going to be rock solid for Georgetown. Still lacking a little bit of three-point shooting, but bringing in Langston Love is big. Like this middle of the Big East, I think is going to be rock solid. Again, Seton Hall, please add some three-point shooting, because I think that's going to be brutal. I think that's going to take still a bit more time for DePaul, but really good pickup for Georgetown. Really like what they're building over there. And then I think that this is a nice pickup as well as Mekhi Willis. He last season was over at Louisiana Monroe. He has decided that he is going to be joining Texas State, and this is the second man in the last 48 hours to go from Louisiana Monroe on over to Texas State, as we saw that out of Jalen Bolden. Bolden was a double-figure scorer that was able to give out around 3 assists per contest last season, and Willis, he was able to average 10.5 points, a little bit over 7 boards, a steal per game. Not a guy that's going to go out there and shoot threes or anything like that, but for Texas State, they're getting back to their roots. Good rebounding, and last year they were a really good three-point shooting team. Bolden and Willis certainly not going to be checking that box for them, but for Texas State, really like these last 2 pickups for them. And I probably am shortchanging Willis a little bit, because his career three-point shooting is 27%. Last year it was a very small sample size, but he actually did shoot closer to 36%. So we'll see if last year was a little bit of a mirage or a little bit of a sign of things to come. But certainly I think that this is a good pickup. And when you're able to bring in guys that are both a part of the same school, like you've got in this case with a pair of guys coming on over from Louisiana Monroe, I always think that that's very big. And I think that this is going to be helping that team out moving forward. This one is going to be more of an experience ad rather than anything else, as if Jack Scott is seeing minutes for Duke, I don't know what to tell you. He was over at Princeton this last season, averaged 1.7 points and 1.7 rebounds per game. He averaged about 10 minutes per contest. If he's seeing meaningful minutes for Duke, this is not good, to say the least. And for Duke, they always seem to add 1 or 2 of these guys that were sort of like a bench warmer at a mid-major school. They bring them in to be able to help them out a little bit in terms of like experience, what have you. So that's going to be able to help them out a little bit with that regard, and that's exactly what they're able to do. They're able to be like motivating guys. They're able to come in and they're able to just give a win one for the Gipper speech. They always want to try to have a little bit of experience, because Duke, they're still one of those teams that utilize a whole bunch of freshmen, and they're going to be having that with the Boucher brothers. So that was pretty much an experience ad and absolutely nothing else. DeMarco Bethea, he last year was over at East Texas A&M. He has decided that he is going to be staying in the Southland, and he's going to be heading on over to Houston Christian. And for Bethea, not a guy that was like a terrorizer or anything like that at 6'8", but rock solid, about 7 points, 4 rebounds per game. In Houston Christian, they did have a little bit of a rough go of it on the glass, but I do like what this Houston Christian team is building up, and Houston Christian is one of those programs that they took my advice. They hired on a D2 coach in their last cycle, last offseason. They brought in Craig Daughtry, and I recognize that 12-20 is not laying the world on fire, but they were actually a really good against the spread team, and compared to where they were, at the very least, they were showing a heartbeat, and you can tell that this was a very improved program. And for Houston Christian, they don't necessarily have like super duper deep pockets, but they brought in a few solid guys. Obita Curtis, who's coming in over from Eastern Illinois at 6'5", has a bit of versatility. Kylan Green just couldn't really get out there on the floor over at Utah Valley. You should be able to find a home here with Houston Christian as well. So I think that this is a rock solid pickup for them. I think that Bethea comes in right away, gives them a little bit more size and a little bit more rebounding than what they had before, and this should be able to give them a nice little sign moving forward. And then Deshaun Giddens, he was over at Florida National this last season, and he's decided that he is going to be going to Sacred Heart. And for Sacred Heart, they had really good versatility with the likes of Anquan Hill and company that were at 6'7", 6'8", able to pop it from 3. And Giddens, he's not going to be able to provide as much of that, but he should be able to give them more defense that they had a season ago. Sacred Heart last year was one of the worst three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. And Florida National, always good at being able to ball hawk. For Giddens last year, 8 points, steal and half per contest, 4 rebounds. Now, he did shoot 25% from three-point range, so that's going to be a little bit of an issue, but I feel like Anthony Latina is looking at himself in the mirror, realizes that Sacred Goddard needs to play a little bit more defense. That's clearly what they're going to be doing here, and I think that this is a good pickup just in terms of being able to fortify that a little bit more, and I do think that this one is going to be panning out for them moving forward, and I do think that this one is going to be panning out as well. As you've got Nazir Mohammed. He last season was over at UTSA, meet for the Roadrunners. He's decided that he is going to be going on over to Grambling. Now, guy that just really wasn't able to get out there on the floor in general, and those are the sorts of ads that you're going to get if you're Grambling. For Mohammed, he's a 6'5", little bit of a combo player then. Is capable of shooting threes, but I shot it out about a clip of 27% last season. Averaged about 3 points per contest. Wasn't like a super duper highly touted prospect or anything like that, but a guy that was able to see a few minutes, a guy that was playing in an up and down system. Now he goes to Grambling where it's going to be a little bit more slow, a little bit more control, but out there in the SWAC, I think that he could be much better on the glass than he was out there in the American Conference. I think that this is a solid ad and a guy that Grambling is going to be able to build around. We've seen them a few times be able to bring in guys like this, and they've been able to do a nice job of just being able to find their seed legs in general, and we're looking to find our seed legs as to what we're going to be getting this college basketball season, because north of 2,500 guys entered in the transfer portal, and I am trying to break down everything to try to make this the most successful and profitable college basketball season ever. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast. Rob's best bets. He joined me in the previous segment, and I'll be coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.